The largest generational wealth transfer in American history is quietly happening right now, and most people have no idea it's already started. We're talking about baby boomers, the generation sitting on roughly 41% of America's real estate, finally beginning to let go. Think about that number for a second, because 41% is not a rounding error. That's nearly half the country's residential real estate concentrated in one generation's hands. And for years, everyone kept waiting for the flood, the big release, the moment the dam broke. But here's the twist: there is no flood. This is more like a slow, deliberate leak, the kind that quietly reshapes the landscape before anyone pulls out an umbrella. These aren't distressed sellers panic dumping properties at midnight on Zillow. These are people who've lived in the same home for 30, sometimes 40 years, making deeply intentional decisions. And the reason they're moving might surprise you, because it's not what the retirement brochures promised. Forget the dream of sipping sweet tea on a porch in Scottsdale. Boomers are moving to be near their kids, their grandkids, and their cardiologists. That's not a joke. That's the data talking. And it fundamentally changes how we have to think about this market shift. The psychology here is enormous. Imagine trying to sell a house where your kids took their first steps, where holidays happened for 4 decades, where the walls practically have a biography written into them. This is where the adult children enter the story. And honestly, they might be the most underrated force in this entire equation. Adult children are increasingly the ones nudging, planning, coordinating, and emotionally reassuring their parents through a move that feels less like a real estate transaction and more like closing a chapter of a novel. What this means for the market is that inventory is coming, but slowly, deliberately, and with enormous emotional weight attached to every single listing. The misconception people make is assuming this will be a crash the market moment, like some generational fire sale. But that fundamentally misreads the psychology of who's selling and why. History actually gives us a useful lens here. Every time a major demographic cohort has shifted its housing behavior, the market absorbed it gradually rather than violently, because human beings do not move like data points on a spreadsheet. We've seen versions of this story before, different actors, different decades, and the pattern is almost always the same. Slow build, steady release, then a new normal quietly settles in. The wildest geographic irony of all of this is playing out in places like Las Vegas, where boomers are moving in to be near family while younger workers are simultaneously moving in for jobs, and somehow the market just keeps humming along. Two completely different demographic tides flowing in the same direction at the same time, accidentally keeping each other balanced, which is either brilliant urban planning or dumb luck, and our money is on the latter. For real estate professionals, this shift is essentially creating an entirely new specialty almost overnight. You can't just show up with a lockbox and a smile when someone is untangling 40 years of estate planning, emotional history, and multi-state logistics. That's why designations like the seniors real estate specialist exist, because the transaction is almost secondary to the counseling, the coordination, and the trust building that has to happen first. If you're an investor watching this, here's the practical lesson history keeps trying to teach us. The opportunity is rarely in the obvious headline. It's in the slow, boring, grinding trend that everyone acknowledges, but nobody actually positions for. Moderate, disciplined exposure to markets with natural two-way demographic flow, buying and selling, is almost always a more durable strategy than swinging for the fences on a single cyclical bet. The actionable framework is simpler than it sounds. Identify markets with both outbound boomer inventory and inbound younger workforce demand. Keep position sizes rational, and resist the urge to time the peak of a generational shift that will take a decade to fully unfold. Process and patience will consistently outperform conviction and timing. That's not a philosophy. That's just the track record of every major market cycle we've ever observed. At the end of the day, the silent shift is really just a reminder that the most powerful market forces are usually the quietest ones, not the crashes, not the frenzies, but the slow, inevitable turning of a generational page. Discipline, sizing, and consistency matter infinitely more than being the smartest person in the room with the hottest take. Whatever direction this market moves, the investors and professionals who've prepared rationally, who've built relationships, done the homework, and size their exposure appropriately will be comfortable with any outcome. The only real risk is being caught completely flat-footed because you were waiting for a dramatic signal that this market was never going to give you. And if any of this has you thinking about your next move, whether that's investing in real estate, tackling a renovation, or finding the right lender to make it happen, check out our links in the description below because we can help you get started.